Hey, welcome everybody to the 40 Finance channel. My name's Jeff Beers. Today we're going to look at Costco stock, which was in the news recently because Warren Buffett actually sold out of his position. So we'll dig into the stock valuation, try to make a price prediction for 2021, and see what kind of opportunity there is for Costco stock over both the short and long term for investors. Reminder as always that my stock picks and projections, they're just my opinion for your entertainment. Please make sure you do your own research and due diligence before investing in any stock. And if you enjoy stock market analysis and going deep on stocks like Costco, as well as some other personal finance topics, then please make sure to subscribe to the 40 Finance channel. Thank you to everyone who has made the channel a success so far. Okay, so the big news that came out yesterday was that Warren Buffett sold out of his Costco shares. He had been invested with Costco since 2000. Charlie Munger actually still sits on the board of Costco. So it sent all the financial analysts on a tizzy as far as, what's going on, why is Warren out? I don't think it matters too much in the long-term view of Costco. But it is notable he sold 4.3 million shares in the third quarter. And if you look down at the bottom orange box, whether the exiting of the position in Costco signals Munger's impending departure from Costco's board, Munger is 96 years old, or Buffett's belief Amazon is really the one to beat in retail's future. He owns 500,000 shares of Amazon per the new filing. That is all unclear. This is definitely a CNBC Warren Buffett interview episode right here in the making. But for purposes of this video, we are going to focus on Costco and not Costco's investors. Take a look at the stock and see if we can come up with a price prediction for 2021. All right, looking at Costco stock today, we have a price of $386.82. Look at the screen chart off to the right. You can see that this sort of lockdown period was quite the boom for Costco as all their members utilized the store to stock up on supplies. It's arguably one of the better stores to go to because you could buy in bulk. And that certainly came into play for Costco as they saw record revenues. PE ratio of 42.97, EPS today in the last 12 months of 9.02. And on the dividend side, you get a $2.80 dividend over the last 12 months, and that pays out at 0.74% of today's price. But you see the orange line here, Costco just announced a $10 special dividend that they're paying out to shareholders on December 11th of 2020. So you factor all that together and you got about, just under $13 worth of dividends. And that certainly plays into the total stock returns. Looking up at the top of the screen, we got trailing 12 months revenue of $166 billion, cash on hand of $13 billion, and a debt load of $11 billion. Costco is well known for their cash position and managing their balance sheet, so no super concerns here about bankruptcy or anything like that. All right, so now it's time to put together our price prediction for 2021. We use the simple formula, price equals PE times EPS. So if we get the PE and the EPS, if we can project those two variables, then that gives us a price projection for 2021. Costco's fiscal year runs September through August. So we just had the close of fiscal year 2020. And this projection is for September 2021 earnings call. So the fiscal year will end August 21. It'll take them a month or so to, get all the numbers together and have an earnings call. So essentially we're talking 10 months from now. Keep in mind that all this data is subjective based on my opinion, particularly for things like PE, EPS, economic conditions, all those things. All right, so for the first step in the formula, we need to come up with a projected PE. You can see in this line here how the PE of Costco stock has sort of changed over the past several quarters. Historically, they're right in the 30s and 29s if you go back multiple years. But obviously the stock market has started running a little higher here recently as we're in this massive bull market. and Costco has been one of those stocks that's had a slew of good news during this time. So at the end of the day, I have to pick something, and I am picking a PE projection of 34. I'm assuming that the PE valuations in the market today, not just for Costco, but for lots of other stocks, is going to come down slightly. However, the 34 is still above their historical average, and that kind of factors in the interest rates and other things that are going on. So obviously, if you do this exercise at home, you can use this data and make whatever PE projection you want. I'm sticking with 34. All right, next part of the formula is our EPS projection. I landed at 982, and just to let you know how I got there, I always look back to see how has Costco surprised analysts over the past few quarters. And honestly, Costco pretty much has nailed it. These two dates right here are going to be during the pandemic boom. So it's very difficult for companies to sort of project business. But if we go back a couple quarters to, let's call it normal times, Costco was pretty predictable as far as where they landed from an EPS standpoint. So what I did at the end of the day, since we still have a couple quarters left of potential lockdowns, etc., is I took 976 and I added about 5% to it. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if this number went up to $10 slowly over time. And the reason is you can see over just the past 90 days, Costco's EPS estimates from analysts has already climbed whatever that is, 40 cents. So this is probably closer to 10. I just wanted to play it safe because I do believe by the time the second half of their fiscal year hits, we are going to be in a situation where maybe Costco's sales decline slightly as people get out and about and do more things. All right, so we've got our EPS and our PE, and actually it looks like I put 985 in there, which is fine. It's a couple pennies more to the upside. But if you have a 985 EPS and my projected PE of 34, that gives you a price today of $334.90. That's minus 13% from today's price, but you also should factor in your total shareholder returns of, basically $13, which is a $10 special dividend, plus about $280 for the quarterlies. Now, if you disagree with my perspective on PE, you could take today's PE and plug in 985 times 42 for the PE today. That puts you at 413.70, which is about plus 7% from today's price. Okay, so let's compare my price projections with the experts at Tip Ranks here. I always do 4- and 5-star analysts only, and we always use the freshest data that they have. So that's when these projections came out. And you can see across the board, you got most analysts landing around 400 or a little bit over. You pretty much have a consensus buy. This hold at 310, a little old at 1 month ago, but just because that's the only person, I think you have to chalk it up as an outlier right now. So theoretically, analysts are expecting either a higher EPS or approximately the same PE valuation for Costco around this time next year. All right, so bottom line on Costco, it's a great stock. It's been a great stock for so many years. I mean, Warren Buffett was in it for 20 years, just to give you an example. It would be interesting to see what his total returns were over that time. But the bottom line is right now, I think that when you throw in the total stock return of the dividends and everything else, then Costco is still as good as it was probably in 2020. The only thing that I noticed in my analysis and coming up with a price prediction was that, hey, like PEs are running hot for this one, perhaps the hottest they've ever been. So anytime you get in that situation, you just have to be careful. Of course, there's always that scenario that PEs remain the same, or Costco blows their earnings per share out of the water, or issues another special dividend. All those things would come into play when thinking about Costco. But the short version here is this is a long-term stock. So we're not necessarily expecting it to go to the moon over the next 6 to 12 months. People who are in Costco are generally long-term investors, and likely members of the club as well. So a lot of it makes sense. The competitive mode is there. So if anything else, if you're shopping for Costco right now, maybe try to sneak in on some market dips, lower your cost basis where applicable. But otherwise, I think you can sleep well at night with a stock like this. All right, guys, that's my Costco stock analysis. Let me know what you think in the comments. We will see you on the next video.